Well, Kelly, thank you so much for being here with me on the Entrepreneurial Success Podcast. Like I said earlier, I love having these conversations because you never know what's going to come from them. And I'm particularly looking forward to our conversation today. And we're going to talk specifically about visibility and visibility strategies. But before we dive into all of that, why don't I hand over to you so you can introduce yourself to the audience and tell us what you do?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited for this conversation as well. We already bonded about our family in each other's countries. So my name is Kelly Sinclair, and I am a visibility coach based in Canada, over on the west side near the beautiful Rocky Mountains. Tourists might know the area of Banff. I was there on Monday. I can see it from my house and I love it. And I am a mom of two girls, and most of my days are spent driving them around to all of the activities, the hockey, the gymnastics. It's currently evaluation season. It's very stressful for the kids and for our family. And that is ultimately why I became an entrepreneur in the first place, because I realized that there was just no sustainability in getting up and driving to the corporate job and chugging the coffee and refilling the coffee on the way there and just feeling so exhausted. I know that there's this common narrative that when you have little kids, and mine were 1 and 3 at the time, you're just supposed to be exhausted. You're not supposed to ever feel like yourself. And this is normal. And it wasn't normal, right? Not normal to feel like every single day you're just drained from start to finish and you have no quality time with your kids. Like, why did you become a parent anyway? What's the whole point of working? And I was working at a PR firm, and that's my background. It's public relations, communications, and doing all of those things in the world of helping you get your message out there. And I was faced with a critical decision moment. A lot of us going into entrepreneurship have that story where it was oh, it's this or something drastic is going to happen. And for me, that was my mom was really sick with breast cancer. And it became obvious that this was not going to go well and it was going downhill. And so I asked myself, what should I do? Do I keep doing this career that I've been, my whole life has been about, train for this, I'm working my way up, all of that stuff? Or do I prioritize my family values? And that was the choice that I made. And I took a leave of absence from work. And very sadly, only 8 days later, she passed away. So I
Yeah,
had
so
that.
sorry.
Thank you. And now this was 7 years ago. And it's crazy to think that it's been that long, but it was that moment that gave me that reflection. So there's the silver lining in the tragedy of, this isn't how I want to spend my life. This isn't how I want to spend my time. This isn't what we wanted for our family. So what can I do with the skill set that I have that is going to allow me to build the life that I want
Yeah.
from a flexibility perspective? And now I always say that success to me is walking my kids to school every day. And now it's starting work at 9, 10 in the morning, ending when they get home from school. These things are so important. And that's why I actually decided that when I started my business, and I was like, how do I use my skill sets and communications, PR, all the stuff, and brand, and bring it to entrepreneurs? Because I was like, this is what we should have more of. We need to spend more of our time doing things that light us up. And that's what entrepreneurs do, right? They find something that fires their soul up and they pour everything that they have into it. And I just want to be there to support them with actually getting themselves out there, finding the people that they can serve and support, creating the customers and the clients, and doing that through different ways that actually don't feel draining and don't feel like a requirement or that they have to do it, but actually in ways that are in alignment for them so that they can truly attract the people that they can help. And that
Yeah.
way, that's my bigger mission, right? Is the more people doing what they love, the happier the world becomes.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that you're saying that because for me, as a business and a client attraction coach, when I have conversations with people, the biggest thing that always comes up is I'm not visible enough. I need to be more visible because I need to attract more clients. And I already love this conversation because I just know where it's going to go. But I would love to hear from your perspective. What does visibility then mean to you with all of your years' experience in PR, obviously running your own business as an entrepreneur? But what does visibility specifically mean to you?
Yes. So I think of like what we really care about as business owners is sales. At the end of the day, we don't have a business if we don't have sales. So I talk about how visibility fits into your sales cycle, right? So if you reverse engineer this, sales come from leads, that comes from your audience, that comes from visibility. So first you have to put yourself out there and find people. So finding the people means attracting an audience. And when I define the difference between audience and leads, this might help a little bit. Audience to me is anybody that you have the ability to communicate with because they're in your world in some way, right? So that maybe means you went to an event and there's people there, there's an audience, you can communicate with them. You have a podcast, there's an audience, you can communicate with them. You get on someone else's podcast, there's an audience to communicate with. You build an email list, there's an audience that you now own, which is great, and you can reach them. Or even social media and using DMs and connecting with people on there. The leads are the people who actually like have raised their hand, have shown interest specifically in wanting to work with you or buy from you and whatever it is that you do. So they're a little bit more of like a subset of the audience, right? And those are the people who you ultimately get for sales. So to me, visibility is any of the things that you're doing to reach your ideal audience. And that's really important because visibility, for the sake of visibility, is not necessarily beneficial, because if that was the case, we could all just put up a billboard in Times Square and see hundreds of millions of people see it every week. So therefore I'm going to be so successful. That audience is not necessarily your audience. So it's more powerful to find methods that get you in front of the right people, which of course comes back to having clarity about who those people are, right? The more clarity you can have about who your audience is, the better off you will be in trying to figure out the ways that you can reach them. And a lot of that too, as like a pro tip, is all about relationship building. So when you can create relationships with other people who are already bringing together the audience that you have, that's the fast track to reaching the people who eventually become your clients.
Exactly. And just like silly example, but just like we are having this conversation now, I'm interviewing you for this podcast, meaning now you being placed in front of my audience and you being showcased as the expert in visibility. So
yes,
the same thing applies. It's about where can you go out and do those collaborations, but also where can you go out in order to find your audience.
And if I can use that example to just like kind of emphasize this point, is that invitation came to speak on this podcast, I could just say yes, right? It's like, oh, it's a podcast. That's great. No, that's not every podcast is the right fit, right? And not every podcast is the right audience for you. So you have to do a little bit of research. So before I accepted this invitation, I'm like looking up who Henriette is. What is this show? Who is it for? What are her values? Make sure we're aligned, because otherwise this conversation isn't going to go well. So we have to take those extra sort of steps in. And so whether or not you're receiving an invitation or you're trying to pitch yourself for a show, those are part of the research to do.
Yes, absolutely. But from your experience, tell us a little bit about what it is that you are doing for yourself in order to enhance your own visibility. Do you have a strategy, or what is it that you're doing for yourself in order to grow your business?
Absolutely. I have been prioritizing visibility for over a year now, specifically, like, of course, it was always part of it, right? It's like, well, we know we need to get visible, but like, I think there's a difference in actually saying this is now a priority for me. And I now make sure that it's sort of my number one thing that I do every single day. And because of that, it becomes a habit. And because of that, it becomes something that you can do in really under 10 minutes a day. Like sometimes I just want to say that because people can feel a little intimidated by what some of the activities might be. And when you first start, maybe it does take you a little bit longer, but the momentum that you build from continuously putting yourself out there and trying different things, it's incredible. And it really like speeds up the process for you as well. So I started what I call my visibility tour method back in July of 2023. And that was because my kids were going to be home for the summer. They weren't going to very many camps. I didn't have a lot of childcare. I knew they were going to be in my hair. I got a paddle board. I wanted to go use it. Like I wanted to play. And I was like, okay, but I know if I just do that and I don't sort of stay visible or make intentional visibility, I'm just going to end up in September going, hey, you remember me? And like starting from scratch. So the first thing that I did, and this is not what the first thing most people are going to do, because of my background in public relations and my relationships in my community, and I have a podcast called Entrepreneur School, I wanted to tell people about that. So I reached out to the media and I did a pitch to say, hey, I have this show. It's 6 months old. This is what it's about. Here's why the people of my town will care about it. And I got some incredible coverage from that. Radio interview, 2 online articles, print paper. And I was on the front page of that print paper too, which was like, holy. And so that in and of itself was like, okay, this is fun. Like, I'm going to make sure that I'm doing more of these things. And they don't always have to be that big either. But what I want to share is the ripple effect of taking an action like that. And so before I kind of go on with this story, just to clarify, visibility is external facing, which means it involves somebody else. There's proof it happened. There's proof you tried. You didn't just go like, change something on your website or do something that feels like, those tasks that we put on our list that feel like we have to do, but they're really behind the scenes, kind of keeping you safe. So think about it external facing. After that media coverage hit, my podcast ratings spiked as they would. And I got noticed by an organization that was pitching some big speakers, some big guests. And this one pitch kept coming through and they kept, following up. You're a podcast host. You get this like, did you get my pitch? They're like, blah, blah, blah. And like, some of them don't stand out, but some of them do. And this one stood out. And I finally looked into it. And this person who ended up interviewing is like, over 1 million Instagram followers, just had a big event with like 7,000 people at it, has people on his stage like Ed Milet and Russell Brunson and like big names in the digital marketing and personal development space. And I was like, okay, I'll talk to him. I mean, he owns a helicopter. Like, how do I relate to that? So I had this interview and I was feeling on fire, right? And this is the whole momentum building. And from there I went, there's this speaking opportunity I'd really like in Nashville at this podcasting conference. And I'm going to take this story and turn it into a case study and pitch myself. And so fast forward to April, I'm in Nashville speaking at this conference because of the one thing that I did and the ripple effect that it had, and how now I have relationships with the people that I met in that room, and I've been on their podcast and they've been on my podcast and we've been collaborating, and it just keeps stacking and stacking and stacking. So to me, as far as what am I doing? It's prioritizing visibility. And I love that it gets to be a variety of different approaches. It doesn't have to be just one thing. Like I could say, I'm all in on speaking or I'm all in on podcasting or whatever. And maybe that's what feels really good for you if you want to just really focus on that and get used to one particular way. And that's totally fine because everything works. Everything works, and also everything doesn't work, right? It's just a matter of putting the right energy into it and having that audience alignment that we were talking about. So it's that beautiful ripple of like you throw a rock into the water and the first ripple is like a big effort and a big whew, right? And then they get smaller and smaller and simpler and they reach further. And that's what's happening after continuously doing this, continuously making an effort. And now it's shifted from being mostly in a pitch, finding opportunities for myself, to more of being in receipt of invitations. Right? Which is a lovely shift that can happen after you consistently do this and build relationships, because now you have people referring you and recommending you as collaboration guests or as podcast guests or as affiliate partners or as a service provider that you are. All of those things are great.
I know. And I love hearing your story. And I think the most beautiful part of it all, and I'm going to say it out loud, is throughout this whole conversation that we've had so far, not at one stage did we talk about social media. And I know this is where everybody's like, but what about social media? What about social
Yeah.
media? We need to be visible on social. What about social media? So let's talk about that a little bit, because this is where you and I started giggling before we actually started
Yes.
hitting the recording button. With all of the visibility strategies out there, for women in business, what do you feel women tend to get wrong when it comes to visibility? And what other strategies are there that they can actually really zone in on?
Yeah, I'm really glad that you asked that because my whole shtick is how to get visible without relying on social media because I
Yes.
know that it can be draining. I've been watching people lately who've built up huge followings sort of saying goodbye, like goodbye posts and like social media is ruining my mental health and I can't be here and I don't want to use this platform anymore. And then it's like, oh no, well, how is that going to affect their business, right? And I think that there's this narrative that is ingrained in us so much that I know that there's people who are, you know, prioritizing paying somebody else to do their social media for them rather than building a more integrated and aligned visibility strategy that feels good, right? People are
Yes.
like, oh, someone does my social media for me. Like, and in some cases, I think that's okay. But when you're the solopreneur and you're the face of your brand, I don't love that for you. So when we talk about social media, it's do I have to be there in order to be successful? I don't believe that the answer is necessarily yes. I think we can shift the way that we approach it into more of a how do I have an online presence? Because one thing social media is great for, and I'm loving it right now. I just was at a live event. I met all these people, and now I'm talking to them, like talking to people, using it to connect like it's supposed to be, not so I can post and be like, let's hope this gets on the explore feed, or let's hope that I get, thousands of views on this video. No, I'm using it to repurpose content from other places. So I will be, posting a behind the scenes of this video, podcast recording with you. I will talk about those kinds of things. I have my own podcast, so I just post my podcast clips and things like that on there, which is great. It just shows that you exist, right? It's kind of
Yes.
the one place that you can show up and people can check that, you're still, here, because a website can sit there and be stagnant. You don't really know, is this person still in business? So I'm going to probably go check out their social media. Plus, it's one of the first places that we connect with each other. When I saw this, I'm going to check out your social media, hear your voice, see the way that you're showing up and making sure that there feels like a connection there. So I do think that there's some importance to it. I just think that we can also not have to get up in the morning and go, what do I post today? How can I think about, I have to post 3 times or 5 times or whatever this week? And we're filtering everything we do through that lens instead of what are the other things that we're doing and how can we just use social media to share that, to connect with people and to build relationships. So
Yes.
that's the differentiator, if that answers your question.
No, it does. And I love that because it's funny enough, just before we started the recording on this, I had a conversation with another lady and we spoke about social media. And it's almost like there was a little microphone and you heard exactly what I said, because I said the exact same thing to her. I said to her that, the psychology behind how people are now using social media has changed. Your website is
Mm-hmm.
static, so they go and check it out, even though you can update it, but it's static. They want to see how active you are. When's the last time you posted? What is the kind of stuff that you're posting? Can they hear you? Can they see you? All of those kind of things. And that kind of builds that credibility, like, oh, this person is still active. They're still running their business. And
Yeah.
then it will take them a little bit of time to build that relationship before there's any engagement, before they become even maybe part of your audience, as you mentioned earlier. And then from there, they become a lead. So it's funny that you're mentioning that, because I was like, oh my gosh, I just had that conversation like half an hour ago.
Yes. And I think the other piece to remember when it comes to sales is that like people buy from people, right? We
Yeah.
want to know the person, we want to trust them, we want to like them. Actually, like I know that's a big, build your know, like, and trust factor, but it's true. And showing up as you are, sharing your morning walk with your dog, talking about being I was literally last night working from a table across from the cafeteria, surrounded by kids running around, um, at the hockey evaluations that I was at. And like, those are the things that people will remember me for. And it helps you
Mm.
stand out more than just your I help statement and all this stuff, which is great. And I, work with people on building those brand messages and everything as well. But like, the personality side is so important. And how can you just use social media as a way of really showcasing your personality more? I think it's
Yes.
more of an appropriate platform for that than your website necessarily is. And depending on whatever else you're doing for visibility. So we were sort of talking about what are some of the strategies you can use. And I said, like, everything works and everything doesn't work. So
Yes.
it's about finding what feels really good for you. And I will never prescribe the same visibility strategy to any business. In over 15 years of working in marketing and communications, zero duplication of plans. Your goals are different, your audience is different.
Yeah.
The way that you want to show up, what you want to do, how you want to reach people. If you love speaking, you love going to networking events, you're introverted, you want to stay behind the scenes, you like to write, lots of different opportunities for you. And it's just a matter of finding out what that customized plan would look like.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, some of the things that you used as your own example as to what it is that you're doing is just reaching out to publications, seeing where are some of those PR opportunities that you yourself can work on. You don't need to physically pay a PR company to do this. There are so many things that you can do yourself. The only requirement is a little bit of your time to sit and do the research. And you've got to go out there and just reach out to these people. And I know the biggest stigma for so many of us is, we're scared. We don't want
Mm-hmm,
to reach out to them because what if I come
mm-hmm,
back and say no?
mm-hmm.
Who do we reach out to? How do we do this? But can I
Yeah.
really do it? Am I really worth it? And then the self-sabotage just come and try and pull you down. So I
Yep.
know those are some of the things that people say, like, yeah, I can do that. But when it really comes to taking the action, we go like, oh, maybe I'm not worth it.
Yes. And this is so normal. Absolutely. Of course, you're going to feel. I was scared. I literally know the media. Like, my kids play softball together with them. Like, we're friends. But still, I was scared to pitch myself because I pitched my clients no problem. But pitching myself was a bigger step. And you get nervous and you're like, what if they say no? Oh my gosh. But when something happens, no matter what you do, I call this like the momentum model. You're going to get really grounded and connected in why you want something to happen. Then you're going to take the action, and then you're
Yeah.
going to see a result. And the result is going
Yes.
to be multiple things: yes or no to whatever you requested, and a feeling of energy that is so powerful that you're going to go ahead and do another thing. Like, I have so many examples of this, and I know this is why the big underlying theme I hope that you're hearing from this conversation is that it is critical you create a visibility habit, that you have a strategy and that you do this regularly, because just like anything else, it's so much harder to get started again when you stop, right? And
Yes.
so, like, just keep going and build it like a little bit at a time, because that momentum is what is going to help you get over that fear and actually take the action that you need to get the result that you want. So I had somebody reach out about speaking on a summit, and there were some like big names on this summit, like authors of books that I've read, like exciting kind of group to be part of. And I had to do like an interview with her to make sure that we were aligned and make sure that it was a good fit to be on her event. And once we had that conversation, and she also had like an email list size requirement, and I didn't quite meet it, so I had to negotiate some other ways to profile the event. She said yes, and I was in. And then I was like, sweet, I'm like pumped about this. I'm going to go do a workout now. Like, I'm just like, I just did a hard thing, I'm going to go do another hard thing. And sometimes it's vice versa. Like, do something you're physically like challenged by, and then let that transfer over into your business. There's lots of ways to sort of mind hack yourself to get
Yeah.
yourself to take that action. And
Yeah.
if worst comes to worst, just come find me, because I'm very good at making people do things.
No, but I love that because I always talk about inspired action. If you're
Mhm.
excited about something, if you really feel like the energy is there, it's inspired action. So take action with that energy. But as soon as you feel like you are drained, you go like, ugh, do I really have to do? That's the worst kind of energy to try and do
Yes.
something.
And when you're
So
showing
don't
up and
even go
making
for
your,
it.
yeah, you're making your social media posts going, oh, I have to post 3 more times today. It's gonna not work. Like
No.
nobody's gonna see it. No one's gonna resonate with it because the energy you put into it, I totally believe in this. It comes through, right?
Yes.
So if it doesn't feel exciting, don't do it.
Don't post it.
Mhm.
Exactly. I agree. 100%. Oh my gosh. I feel maybe we should do another podcast about taking action with the right energy, because you and I are so aligned with that. There's so
Yes.
much we can talk about that. But I just love having this conversation with you. And I think also the big thing here is which I said to you before we started recording this, is I think in a nice way we're kind of giving everybody who's listening to this a bit of permission to say, do not focus on social media so much. If it is draining you, do not do it. Of course, there needs to be an element of visibility there, but find other visibility strategies that is aligned with you, that you can actually get excited about and that you can stay consistent with, because
Yeah.
there are a ton of other ways out there. It doesn't just have to be social media.
Right. And then just share those other things on social media. So really you're just using social media to repurpose and
Yes.
to create relationships. I was saying, I think before we got on, that I was just at a live event last week. And that's, to me, that's one of my favorite ways to get visible, to create connections, to do things that I would be scared to do otherwise. Like, for example, there was somebody there who was one of the speakers, and she has a big podcast and a huge business and a massive email following. I know all of this, and I think she's great. And because I was in person with her, I actually asked her to be on my show versus would I have done that if I had to send an email or I had to find a different way
Yes.
to connect with her? No. But the conversation, like I'm liking social media right now because my DMs are all lit up. It's just actual people that I'm talking to that I met there and we're just having conversations. And so
Correct.
that feels way better than, oh, I got to make sure I have like a hook for my reel and like I post this and I'm not into that.
Yeah. Oh no, I agree with that 100%. And I love that. And I think, like I said, everybody just feels like, oh, a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. I got the
Mm-hmm.
permission I was looking for. But oh my gosh,
Mm-hmm.
Kelly, we're not going to leave everybody there, because you have got an amazing free toolkit for everybody to look into. Tell us a little bit about this toolkit and what are some of the benefits that they can get from it?
Yes. So I know that one of the hardest things is trying to figure out like what should I do? What should I try? What strategies might work for me? And are they really that complicated? So I actually have a system that I use to track everything that I do. And I have made you this beautiful done for you visibility plan that has over 30 different drop down things you can select, and you can put them right into this little magical calendar that I created that will say, okay, here I'm going to commit to visibility for 30 days. And you can just go click, 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 click. Here's what I'm doing each day. And then you can just do it. And it will take you less than 10 minutes a day to get these things done. And you will see amazing momentum, amazing results. You'll feel energized. You'll see different things happening, creating opportunities for yourself. The more you put yourself out there, the easier it gets. So that toolkit is waiting for you in the link below. And just please come and connect with me. If you want to find me, I'm on the Entrepreneur School podcast. I'm on Instagram. I do answer DMs personally. I love a voice note. Please connect. Let's talk about your visibility strategy. And that's what I do. I help people create their custom visibility plans, and then I support them in implementation.
I love that. Oh my gosh. So, for those of you listening or watching this video, if you want to get your hands on that toolkit, like Kelly said, the link is down below in the show notes. So, make sure you can get that. And then also, if you have any questions for Kelly, or if you feel like, oh my gosh, I just need to talk to somebody about my visibility, all her social media details and a website will be down in the show notes as well. So, make sure you reach out to her. Like she said, she doesn't mind you sending her a DM. Okay. She answers them. It is not a robot. She answers them.
Yes, no robots.
So please, by all means, go and connect with Kelly and have a conversation with her. Because, like we said, oh gosh, how many more times do I need to repeat it? Visibility is not just about social media. There's so many other things you can do. The difference is you've got to find what is right for you. What is that thing that lights you up? What is that thing that will actually help you get the results? And you'll be so surprised, in more cases, it is actually the simplest thing. And it's the thing that really gets you excited, the thing that will actually help you. And this is where I'm getting excited, because I've seen it myself firsthand, how it happens if you just focus on that one thing that works for you. You do not have to do everything else, just focus on what works for you. But if you want to know what that one thing or two things might be, go and have a conversation with Kelly. Kelly, thank you so much again for coming onto the podcast and having this great conversation. I feel lit up just by having this conversation. It's like, oh, I need to go check out a few things myself.
Excellent. Thank you for having me, Henriette.